What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of
The
Zoomer
Zoomer Perspective. He's Jackson. I'm Jacob. Welcome back, everybody. We're pumped. We're excited to be here. I think
Yep.
we've missed, what,
Very
2 weeks
excited.
now?
Fillion weeks.
Yep. Oh, there you
I
go.
don't know.
Straight to
I
the
don't
water.
know. I don't keep track.
In the middle of
I
a
just do it.
conversation, he just drinks.
This is so rude. It was sitting there. It was just beckoning me. It's so thirsty. It's like a habit. It's like I get dehydrated when we don't record because I'm not drinking too much water.
We need that living water,
Yeah.
Quench that thirst.
Amen.
Anyways,
That's a great segue into today's topic. of
Absolutely.
Why you might be feeling spiritually dead.
why do you feel spiritually dead, Jackson? Tell me why you personally, right now,
No.
no.
I've not felt spiritually dead in a very, very long time.
That is good.
And in hindsight, biggest thing that was causing it was like completely living in the world.
Fair?
Definitely. I don't know if have you felt a similar way?
I honestly, I don't know if I've ever thought about it. Not really. It was more that, it was more of a like growing up, more of a tradition, and wasn't really my own faith. It was just like going through the motions,
Yeah, I do actually.
And so I
Many
definitely,
such cases. Many
yeah,
such
and I
cases.
definitely think then it finally just clicked,
Mhm.
Uh,
Do you think like feeling spiritually dead, how much of that would you say is like personal accountability, and then how much of that would you say is like the church's responsibility?
I think it's 100% personal.
Like the church has no responsibility
no.
towards that?
I would say the church has a little bit, but I think you can feel spiritually alive and not have a church family.
Interesting. I don't know if I would agree with that.
But now that I say that, I think about it more, and I would change my thought on that, because
Yeah.
that is unbiblical. So I backtrack.
That is what I was gonna say. So okay, fair enough. That's actually
I backtrack
pretty solid logic.
because I said it because I think it could be all on you, but then as I said it, my brain kind of thought through that, and it's like, no. So I would say it is probably still, I would give yourself 80% of it.
Okay.
But I think it is really important still to have that fellowship and community with your church family to help build your faith on a with a group, not just on your own. People to hold you
exactly what you're saying.
But I would definitely say that 80% is you, on the simple fact of, if you are feeling spiritually dead, your church can't tell that, because you're going to go to church and put a smile on your face and act like everything's okay, unless you share with your church family that you are struggling with something.
All right, I guess that's fair. That would make sense.
What would you say?
That kind of makes sense. I would almost say it's like a two-way street.
50-50?
Yeah, maybe a little bit, maybe like 60-40 personal. Because obviously no one can control your relationship with God, but I would also say the church should have a level of like accountability towards you, and like asking what's going on, interacting with you, like seeing how you're doing in your life, and then also being like holding you accountable, like you said, where it's like, hey, are you coming to church? Are you participating? Like, what's your prayer life like? Things of that nature.
Sure.
So, would you say
You got me convinced.
Okay. Well, that's dope. And something else I was thinking about while we were just kind of talking just now is like, I think there's a lot of people who would say they like have a strong connection with God, but then when you see their life, there's like a really big disconnect. Would you call that like being spiritually dead, or would you kind of call that something else?
Repeat that again.
So okay, yeah, I realize I kind of phrased that a little bit weird. There's plenty of people that I know who go to church regularly, call themselves a Christian, kind of put on this persona as a Christian, but
Sunday morning Christians.
when you look at we'll use that phrase. Yes, okay. But then you look at their life And if you ask them, they would be like, "Oh, well, I feel great spiritually," but then kind of like, "Well, why do you do X, Y, Z?" Would you call that being spiritually dead, or like should we use a term like
I would call it
spiritual psyop or
I would
something
call
like
it
that?
spiritually ignorant,
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
that they just aren't aware. They would consider themselves spiritually alive, but they're ignorant of what being spiritual.
Okay. Yeah. Do you think that could lead to like spiritual death?
Definitely, because if you're not, I mean, for instance, if you're not putting God at the center of your world as God first, prioritize God,
Mm-hmm.
then you're gonna start. Well, son's got a football game today, and we're not gonna be able to come to
Yeah.
Wednesday night. We got sports going on, so we're not gonna be able to
Mm-hmm.
make it. And then next it's gonna be, oh well, there's a tournament this weekend, so we're gonna be out of town.
Mm-hmm.
We won't be there on Sunday, and oh, I don't have time for this, and oh, I don't have time for this. But God is good. Like I just don't have time, and so I think you slowly start prioritizing more and more stuff if you're spiritually ignorant and don't practice to guard your mind and
Mm-hmm.
the spirit is a gift, I guess. And so like if you're not guarding your mind and your body to house that gift, I think then
Mm-hmm.
you can become spirit dead, if that makes sense. Is kind of a
Yeah.
weird way
No,
to
that does.
explain what I'm
That does make
thinking,
sense to
but
me.
yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it can
He's
lead
mentioned.
to being spiritually dead,
Yeah.
to answer your question.
Just kind of eventually being like, okay, why do I feel like I have a disconnect from God or something like that? It's like what you're saying. It can kind of lead to that. Okay, you mentioned like Wednesday night. So would you say like if someone isn't putting that as a priority, would that be suspicious, or were you just using that as an example?
No, I do think that if you don't prioritize a Wednesday night, I mean, unless it's for a good reason,
Mhm.
I just think that if you're not prioritizing fellowship with like-minded Christians and it is just a Sunday morning thing, then I don't think that your church family is a priority in your life.
Okay.
And I would disagree
Fair
with
enough.
that. Some people would argue me on that point, but I didn't mean that specifically meant you were a bad Christian or spiritually dead. I just meant that can continue to lead, just like a dripping faucet can eventually
Okay.
lead to a leaking faucet, which then can lead to your house flooding. Things
Okay. I kind of
can
see it's like
progress and get worse.
you'd call it like a symptom maybe,
Yeah,
or it could be like leading to a bigger issue,
exactly.
but isn't always a bigger issue. You would
Yes,
say.
yes.
Okay, that's fair enough. So, we mentioned like prioritizing God. What are some ways you would say people should go about doing that?
That is a good question. Obviously, it's different for everybody, but I mean, first and foremost, like I said earlier, God first. A lot of people forget that.
Yeah.
A lot of people really forget that it is God first, then it is your spouse, then it is your kids, then it is your family, then it is everybody else, and then it's yourself.
Yeah.
Which is a really hard thing to do.
What would like living God first look like day to day, for example?
One, no, you're not worrying. You're not stressing about what's
Mhm.
going to happen tomorrow, because no matter what happens, God's got it. No matter what happens, whatever happens in this world, there is a house, there's a room waiting for us in heaven.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what happens here, as hard as that can be to actually do and
Live out.
There's a different word I was looking for, but as hard as that can be to live out, that is definitely just something you got to remember is no matter what happens here, it is all temporary. There is a life better in heaven. And I think living with God first, God being the priority in your life, that just takes the stress off your shoulders, and you're not worried about, obviously you're not sitting around being lazy and like not preparing for tomorrow, but you're not worried about it.
Yeah.
So like if
that's actually, I think that's a good point.
For instance, we're in the process of selling a house and looking to buy a new house. And right now the market is super high here. don't know how our
Yeah.
house is going to sell and that type of stuff. So I could sit around stressing about it, pulling my hair and worrying about it. But instead, I'm just going to be like, you know what, whatever happens, happens. God is always taking care of
Yeah.
us. He will continue to take care of us. I believe that he will open the right opportunity for us. I don't know what it will be. It could be, buying a piece of land and living in a little camper, or it could be the perfect house
Based.
opens up, and we're able to buy it
Mhm.
with what we've made from our house. Maybe with our house, there's a buyer that wants it, but then there's another buyer that wants it and gives a higher price for it. Who knows what can happen? Or
Right.
maybe our house doesn't sell for a little bit, all these things could happen. And instead of sitting around stressing about it, you just give it to God,
Yeah. Just okay. Yeah.
prayer,
I
give it to
think.
God, and just whatever happens, happens. Just to truly believe and just release and just have faith in God that he's going to take care of you no matter how bad of a situation it could be.
Mhm.
I think that's what it's like to put God first.
Yeah. I think you make a really good point with that. Is like taking your burdens and actually giving them to Christ instead of just being like, oh, of course I give my burdens to Christ, but then you never actually live it out and you
Yeah.
continue to internalize stuff. I think that's a good point. Yeah. Is there any other? I'm trying to think now because that's sort of what I was thinking in the sense of just a way to prioritize God is being in communication with Him and praying when you get the chance, thinking about Him, thinking about like your actions and how that reflects you being a follower of Christ, or I guess I should say the vice versa of like I'm a follower of Christ, so I'm going to act this way throughout my life.
Yeah.
Instead of just going on autopilot.
Mm-hmm. Well, a little bit of a side note, just to reel back to what I said a second ago. When you put God first and then you put your spouse second, your kids third, it's really, really important to get it in that order. That order is really, really crucial because too many people in this world, one, they don't put God first, but two, they put the kids first. Never put your kids first, ever.
Yeah, it always leads to a dysfunctional house.
Always. In most of society where the kids get put first, the kids are either iPad kids and super spoiled, and then they grow up to not be functioning adults in society, or they're just an absolute terror and have no respect for their parents because they are a higher priority than like the significant other.
Yeah.
And in any scenario, you might think, you're like being a loving parent by giving your kid what they want or whatever. But in the long run, it is so damaging to them. And it doesn't, one, a lot of divorces happen because of that, because kids are first. Two, if a divorce doesn't happen while kids are in, I've seen it with several people just from church, just friends I've known to where all of them have graduated and they become to have an empty house and the parents just don't know what to do with each other anymore. And they just
that is kind of weird. Yeah.
Divorce. And so I just wanted to make a point to just why I said God first, spouse second, kids third, rest of your family, everybody else, yourself is very crucial that way because it can lead to a very dysfunctional household if you don't put it in that order.
I think too, when you prioritize God, a lot of these things fall into place as they should.
Absolutely.
And you start not stumbling and doing things that you would have done when you're prioritizing like yourself, like you said, or your kids or your spouse, or just prioritizing other things besides God. You end up walking the path a lot better, and some of these things just end up flowing a little bit more naturally.
Yeah. And going off of what I said way earlier, when you asked me if I've ever felt spiritually dead, and I said tradition. I want to touch on that a bit more because I think that's a really big thing for a lot of people. Is I remember growing up with one of my friends, and if you ever asked him, he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm Catholic," but I think he attended the Catholic Church like a handful of times. Like that was just it was a tradition, something
like a Christmas and Easter kind of thing.
Yeah. If even, it was just something that he's always been told and it's been passed down.
Yeah.
And I think, can you be spiritually dead if you've never been spiritually alive?
Got him.
I mean, genuine question
Yeah,
to you though.
yeah.
Can
I
you
mean, I would say, I'd say,
in this? I don't know.
I mean, I would just say you've just been dead the whole time.
Yeah. And so, and I think part of that feeling dead and not having that spiritual is because, you've grown up with that tradition of maybe you do go to church every Sunday and it's just a
Mhm.
tradition. You've never put
Yeah.
any heat into it. You just go because it's the thing to do.
Right.
And you're like, well, I said this prayer this one time and God didn't help me. Like it's just
Therefore, like God doesn't exist.
God doesn't exist or I'm
Yeah.
spiritually dead or like doesn't love me or whatever. It's because it's been a tradition. Like you yourself have to live out that your faith. Like you have to have
Mhm.
faith in order to be spiritually alive. You can't
Yeah.
just go and hope something happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I know exactly what you're saying.
And
I
and
think
if
too, when you said faith, it kind of reminded me of the fact that like obviously you need to be praying and you need to be walking with God, but you also, and I think you touched on this a little bit too, you need to be taking action and you need to still be moving forward. You can't just like sit there and just be like, well, I prayed and then nothing happens. Nothing changes because you don't actually change anything. All you do is sit there and pray. And I don't know, it reminds me of the story of have you heard of it? Like a man's on top of his house because there's a flood and he prays that, God will send somebody for him. And God sends him all these opportunities, but he never takes any action. He
a
never
boat
does
shows up and
anything.
he goes, no, no, no,
Yeah.
God's got me. And
Mhm.
then a helicopter shows up and like, no, no, I'm good. God got. And then he
Mhm.
drowns and he's like, God, why didn't you get me? He's like, I sent you two options. You
Yeah,
chose
exactly.
none. You didn't
Yeah,
act.
exactly. I
Yes.
think a lot of people have like conditional faith in that regard where it's like,
Absolutely.
oh,
Or
I'm praying
selfish
and I'm doing
faith.
all these things I'm supposed to do and God's not doing anything for me back. And so therefore like God doesn't exist. And it's like, dude, yeah, I think you just said like selfish. Yeah,
Yeah.
super selfish and also super conditional. Nowhere does God promise that he'll do anything for us except for sending Christ.
Well, and there's a difference between like a conditional faith. Like you can't pray for what you want. I mean, you can, but you have to accept and know that that might not be God's will. Like
Yeah,
just
real.
because God doesn't answer
Real.
that. I mean, Jesus himself was like, Lord, if there is another way so I don't have to die on the cross, please let it be, but let your
Mhm.
will be
And
done.
God was like,
And Jesus accepted that. He's like, it's
yeah,
your
God was
will.
like, nope. No, you're going on that cross. Yeah.
And so, yeah,
So that's so
if
true.
you only come to God in prayer and be like, God, um, allow me to uh, get this perfect house over here, or allow my son to get into this one college, or this and this and this. And if that doesn't happen, you're not happy with God. You think prayer doesn't work. Um, it's because it's that conditional faith. It's like you only have faith if God is doing what you want. And that's not how God works. And
Yeah,
I think
that's
a
so
lot of
true.
people struggle with that.
Yeah.
I think it was the movie like God's Not Dead or something,
Mhm.
where it was like a atheist because God didn't answer his prayers. It was like God
Yeah.
took
Wait.
my
Yeah. No,
mother
you're
from
right. I
me,
remember. Yeah. Mhm.
and he's not real. He didn't answer my prayer. He didn't save my mother. Instead of being like, Lord, if there's a way to help her, please help her. But if it's your will, Lord, then I ask that you
Mhm.
take her into her house and give her a room. You know what I mean? Like just
Yep.
accept that if she is a Christian and a believer, that your mom will go up and be with the Lord, and that's all we've all lived for on this world,
Yeah.
is to one day get to that. So how can you be selfish and be upset at God for giving your mom the life she wanted, or be upset at your mom for leaving you? I think that's really what conditional faith is for me. Like when I think of the word conditional faith, I think of like that scenario,
Mhm.
people like that.
Yeah. And it is hard. I'm not gonna.
No,
I'm
I'm not
gonna
saying
sit here and
none
act
of
like
this is
that's
easy.
super
It's
easy.
easy for
Yeah.
us to say it.
Yeah. Absolutely. But yeah, I know you're right. That's how you have to look at it, and you have to trust God 100%. I was gonna ask you next. Do you feel like more people tend to be spiritually dead, or do you feel like things are sort of changing and people are starting to kind of come spiritually alive again.
No, I mean, it depends. I think people are starting to open their eyes and realize and
Yeah.
see the truth and not be so blinded. But I still think a lot of people are spiritually dead just because they get too sucked into their day job, their life, and church just becomes a thing they do that, it's like, oh, I gotta go to church today. Like how many people do you know that when they travel, they still go to church somewhere, even if it's not their home?
I
don't
don't
know very
actually know
many.
anybody. Yeah, I
I
can't
do.
think of anybody off the top of my head.
I
Yeah.
do. It's a very fun thing.
I'm not traveling enough to be
I
doing
love
that.
it. It's really sad when we don't, because like sometimes we'll go skiing and we ski on Sunday, which is kind of sad because I really enjoy, no matter where we travel, we still get to go and meet this church family somewhere. And so like we'll go to these business functions, and there's a whole group of us that go to churches of Christ all around the world, or all around the states, and we'll all go as one big group to visit this church. And it's a fun thing to come together as not only a family where we know each other, but to be a part of this other family. And
Yeah.
one, it's really cool to them to see somebody that's visiting, that you prioritize church enough to, even though you're in a random town, you still go somewhere. Like Lexi and I, on our honeymoon, we were in Florida, and we tried to find a church to go to on Wednesday night. Unfortunately, it was a very small church. So they did it in like someone's house.
Yeah.
And so the schedule got messed up, and so we weren't able to actually make it to one of them. But my point in all of that is people prioritize and think they get too comfortable, and they don't want to walk into a church they don't know, and they don't want to take the time out of their trip or their vacation to go and find a church and meet these new people and have that little awkward connection of where you're like, hey,
I know,
tell your story.
That's such a good point, because there's like a lot of friction, and it is hard to like interact with new people, especially when you've been going to church.
Well, and you don't know their songs and
plenty of years. Yeah.
But it is so much fun, and I would encourage everyone, if you have the chance to do it, find a church that is, as close to what you are normally go to. Obviously, I would encourage you to find a church that is biblically accurate and based solely out of the Bible, and not their own random book and things they come up with. But obviously, when you go find a church, you're going to find one that's similar to the one you currently attend. Wherever you are, whatever faith you are, go find those people that are part of your church family, because it is really fun, and it's really fun to be able to know people all over the states and be at home any. Because like I know whatever town I'm in, if there's a church there, there's a church family there, or there's a church family nearby. If I ever needed something, I could reach out to one of those elders, and somebody would come help.
True.
And I just think a lot of people
Good point.
don't think of the church family as
like that.
whole. They think of it as just their home congregation.
That's actually a really good point. Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to add on to. I think you hit it on the nail head. That's
and to drag back into spiritually dead. Where people don't do that, it's just when they're prioritizing the world, and they just get distracted by work and vacation, and just don't take the time to prioritize.
That's fair. Well, so say someone's listening to this and they're like, oh, I realize this is what I'm doing a lot. What would be a good course of action for them to kind of go back and kind of start walking with God a little bit more?
Obviously, prayer. I mean, we say it a lot. We've said it a lot on this episode. We say it a lot on every episode. But pure, true prayer. Sit down, make a list. Make a list of people you want to pray for. Some of your own requests, things you're thankful for. I don't like to pray and just ask. I like to thank God for
100%. I feel you.
And so, like, for instance, my nightly prayer is, thanking God for Lexi, for Finley, for our
Mhm.
church family and friends, and obviously for his son, the sacrifice he gave, and just all of the amazing gifts and blessings he's given us. There's so many that I could not begin to name half of them.
Yeah, real.
With that, I obviously, if something's going on, and pray for somebody that is going through a sickness or has a surgery coming up. That's just, if it's a sickness, depending on the sickness, especially if it's like one that is very deadly, is, Lord, be with them. If it is your will to heal them, Lord. If it's not, be with their family to be able to comprehend and to just love that person, and
Yeah.
to be able to heal and to not, that makes sense. To just
It
not
is.
only do you pray for that person, but you pray for that family. I think it's a huge thing. Just like the plane crash over.
Oh yeah. In DC.
Yeah. What's the river called? Can't think of the river.
Oh, right now.
Anyways, the plane wreck in DC. I mean, obviously, every single one of those person, unless they found a survivor, but every single one of those person died.
everybody
Like
died.
73.
Yeah.
I mean, the water was freezing, and so I obviously can't pray for those people. That's been
Maybe
done
pray for their
and
families.
gone, but pray for their families and loved
Absolutely.
ones that, to just be able to get through that hard time and be able to let them go.
Right. Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all.
And so I think a good way to begin your spiritual growth again is to sit down and to pray and to ask God to show you the path that he wants you to take and to help you grow. But you have to be willing to put whatever he gives you in action.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You got to be willing to take action. I think another really good action to take is think about why you're even a Christian. And
That is really
like,
good.
really, really like deeply think about, okay, why do I even call myself a Christian? Why do I believe that this is true? And then
Why do
once
I go
you've
to church on Sunday
yeah,
morning?
once you've come to that conclusion, once you've gotten to that point, then start thinking about what is that actually supposed to look like in my life? If this is something I actually believe, then my actions need to be behind it instead of just, well, I think this thing is true, and so do my parents, and I just was brought up in it, and so I'm just gonna do this. But really, I just want to live my life however you want to. And I really want to emphasize as well, like it doesn't mean that there aren't going to be moments where you fall short, or it doesn't mean that immediately as soon as you have this shoot, I just lost my train of thought. This
Revelation.
this idea, yes, revelation. Thank you. It doesn't mean as soon as you have this revelation that all of a sudden, all these bad habits, all of this, basically this habit that you've created where you are prioritizing yourself and you're prioritizing other things. That doesn't mean the bad habits aren't going to kick in, but it means, okay, I'm going to do better to prioritize my relationship with Christ, to prioritize my relationship with my church congregation, and start living out your faith more than just going through the motions, like you were saying earlier, of this is what I was raised into doing, or
being
I
purposeful.
just kind of believe this, but I also want to continue being selfish.
Yeah, in short, being purposeful about your faith.
Yeah.
Definitely. Absolutely. And we've said it several times, but I think another key point in spiritually growth is put God first. Sounds simple. It is simple. It is simple. It's not easy.
Yeah, that's a good way.
Simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah. But once you start going and like actually putting him first, and that's something you're consciously thinking about, eventually that will become the habit, and that will be what you actually do.
Yeah. And I think another thing is not caring what people around you think.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Like if you just act a certain way because somebody's gonna be like, you're a Christian, or whatever. or roll their eyes at you, who cares?
Mhm.
No, put God first, not their
Water on
feelings,
that
not
duck's
your
back.
feelings. What?
Water off a duck's back.
Please elaborate.
Duck feathers are like coated in an oil that they make.
Okay.
It's water resistant, so the water just rolls off them.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Wow.
You've
Learned
never heard
something
of that
new.
phrase before?
Never.
Yeah, it's wild.
I've heard like in a like a situation where you're nervous to do something, like talk to a girl, go on a date, do this interview, to be a duck, to be nice and elegant and smooth on top of the water, but underneath their legs are going just kicking and looking. Their legs are pumping.
You just made that up on the spot.
No, I promise I'm not. But it's like you present this cool, nice, but inside you're like, your heart is beating
Freaking
and
out.
pumping and flipping out. That's okay.
All right. Well, there you go. There's 2 analogies that you guys can use that reference ducks.
Yeah, and I have no idea what I was in the middle of thinking, but
Yeah,
it
me
doesn't
neither.
matter. So.
But I think we kind of covered how you would go about acknowledging if you are a little bit spiritually dead, or if you're kind of encroaching on becoming spiritually dead, and then how to actually get out of that situation.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. A little bit of a shorter one, but just hit replay. Repeat it. Listen again.
Or watch another episode.
Or watch another episode. Show us the support. We want to grow. Not only do we want to grow spiritually just in the path God wants us to take with this podcast, but we also want to grow just in the show itself, how it flows. Jackson and I are really trying to hone in on a topic and to have an end goal with what we want to bring out of it, have points to help it flow through, because at the end of the day, we don't want to go off on a bajillion rabbit trails. By the end of it, you're just like, what?
Only a couple, half a bajillion rabbit holes.
Absolutely. Only half a bajillion. And so, if you guys have any advice or something that you felt was distracting or something, please give us your critiques. We would love to be able to improve the show to help you to enjoy it.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to.
I don't know what other phrase you would use too. I think it worked. So yeah, we hope you guys enjoy the episode. Jacob has the email linked for if you want to leave feedback, and if you're on YouTube, excuse me, leave a comment down below.
You ready for me to do the long-winded pitch?
Oh yeah, you can. Go ahead.
Okay. I hope you guys enjoyed. And if you would like to contact us, you can email us at thezoomerperspectiveshow@gmail.com, or you can go to YouTube and leave us a comment. That wasn't very long-winded. I don't know what else I normally say, but I hope you all enjoyed. Peace out.
Goodbye.